Hi, welcome back. I'm Dr. Zeke, your sleep coach, and today we are going to go over a popular topic that I hit with my clients, of course, especially the females, as it relates to the sleep hormone connection and which parts in your cycle can affect your sleep when it comes to how your hormones fluctuate during the month. So today we are going to talk about your menses phase, the rise in estrogen and what can occur there, ovulation and after ovulation and how your hormones will change, and then of course the luteal phase, as well as the what we quote unquote progesterone crisis, when everything's dropping and now you have that PMS is like the common buzzword that you hear right before or a little bit during your menstrual cycle. So as always, I'm Dr. Zeke Medina. I'm a pharmacist and sleep coach. Nowhere in there does it say I am a hormone expert, but with all my clients, we've been able to dive deep in their hormone testing, their supplements, and really find something that works for them to help support their sleep. So with that said, I work a lot with my clients to work along with their doctors to do this hormone balancing act to improve their sleep. So I was someone in the past that had insomnia for over 20 years from when I was a teenager. And I could remember my father taking different sleep medications to figure out what worked best for his sleep. Sometimes it involved alcohol, and he just stared mindlessly at the TV until he just passed out. When I had my daughter, or when my wife had our daughter, she had horrible sleep. She woke up 15 times a night. She was really eating out of our lives when it comes to just our willpower of just kind of trying to care for a kid that did not sleep. Until one day my wife thought, hey, let me purchase this sleep program to teach her. I thought it was a waste of money, but 2 weeks later, she only woke up one time per night for her nightly feed since she was under 15 pounds. That changed my life. That allowed me to search deeper into what habits and what things I could do to improve my sleep. 6 months later, I'm sleeping 7 hours. I'm off all of my medication. I have no risk anymore for hypertension, high blood pressure at 30. And with that, my sleep coaching practice began. I started treating my clients with sleeping pills that were curious about what other options they can do to get better sleep. And that started a practice where I've been educating people ever since. So that's a little bit long-winded, but with that, I've been able to say that my daughter right there is no longer an insomniac. So that was cured at age 6 months, and we've never looked back since. Now, when it comes to your hormones, this is the fluctuation of hormones, and we're going to dive deep on each little area. So I don't want you to memorize this. We're going to talk about it in detail, and then we're going to create a series of videos of each of those and what we can do with medication, what we can do with supplements, diet, exercise, what we can do, really non-medicated ways to lessen the severity as it relates to your sleep issues. So when we dive in, let's start with the menstrual cycle. Everyone should know when the day your period actually starts, that is day one of your menstrual cycle. That's the day of the cycle to begin with. Now, estrogen and progesterone are basically resetting to baseline, but as this period can end around day 5, sometimes 7, that's when estrogen will start its incline, and you'll notice something, and we'll talk about it in the next slide. But with that, what's happening here is that we are growing and maturing the follicles and really trying to help with ovulation. But during this menstrual period, you might notice some sleep issues related to prostaglandins. These are different than hormones. They're more inflammatory at times, and they can cause something called dysmenorrhea. A lot of us think of it as menstrual cramps when you have a lot of discomfort down in the lower belly, sometimes your inner thighs, your lower back. But this can also lead to things like headaches, nausea, and just not feeling good during your period, which, as you can imagine, can make sleeping a little bit more miserable. So menstrual cycle, we'll break that down in another video, but I want to just kind of bring it up to you at a high level. Now, after your menstrual cycle, that's typically when the rest of your follicular phase is happening until day 14, which is ovulation. Most people know it as like the time you get horny, but in reality, there's an egg being released. nature has a way of trying to get that egg fertilized. So be careful. When it comes down to this, these estrogen levels are rising. It's rebuilding the lining in the uterus. And then with that, you're feeling more energy, improved mood, and increased focus. So as you can imagine, you are looking for a mate, basically, right? But one thing that my clients realize is this is a good time where they can exercise, when they can hit those PRs, those personal records, and they can really work on strength. Hint, hint, doing their mating dance at the gym, looking cute. And that's what happens, right? So really just getting ready for ovulation in a funny way. So, but here, one thing that I can see with a lot of my clients is that they can have a supercharged estrogen spike. So just remember, it boosts your energy. So you might feel around this time of this estrogen spike more restless, waking up more often, difficulties calming down. And it's just something that you should think about when it comes to what are estrogen superchargers. We hear a lot about BPA in plastics and other forms of BPA in plastics that call themselves BPA free. So I always recommend for clients stick with glass or stainless steel, just as a basic way to store things, right? Phthalates are chemicals that are found in plastic, like plastic wrap and things like that, and plastic bags. But you can also notice phthalates in a lot of cosmetics, as well as anything with fragrances. So I try to just avoid fragrances, just flat out, nothing with fragrance or fragrance on the back or perfume. Then we have parabens. These are found in cosmetics as well as sunscreens. So be careful, read the back. Anything that looks like the word paraben, don't use it. Pesticides. So thinking of the dirty dozen foods, those can have chemicals along with everything else in them that can interact with your estrogen receptors. And then, of course, there are foods known as phytoestrogens. They work with estrogen. They help boost up estrogen levels. So think soy and flax seeds, potentially just minimizing those foods around this time, around ovulation. If you are noticing these ability to not rest and you can't fall asleep and you're real restless at night, waking up all the time, maybe we can lessen those foods if you are a big soy or flaxseed type eater. Now, this is ovulation right there in that middle dotted line. This is when you're feeling it all and you're ready to go. But what happens shortly after ovulation is a brief drop in estrogen. So that drop can lead to your energy and your mood really taking that drop too. Some women have noticed they get something of like a hormonal migraine around this time. So if you do get migraines around that time, it would be around day 15, 16, 17. This could occur. And that's when you notice progesterone starting to rise. And progesterone is our more calming sex hormone. But it also helps to balance your estrogen because you need them in a certain ratio. And if one's out of whack, you start to get really bad symptoms of something called estrogen dominance. Now, this luteal phase starts right after ovulation. So when you think about this, this is when estrogen's dropping, progesterone's going, and then they kind of rise together. So progesterone is taking over. And one cool thing about progesterone is that when the body breaks it down to try to get rid of it, some of those things called metabolites, that's the breakdown part of progesterone. There's one called allopregnanolone that acts on your GABA receptors inside the brain, which helps for you to feel more relaxed and more sleepy. Now, when you don't have the amount of progesterone that you should, then things start to happen where you don't feel that relaxation. You feel more wired and things like that. So let's talk real quick, just what does progesterone do and why is it so important to your cycle? So when we look at the job that progesterone plays, we know, number one, it has positive effects on sleep and brain health. It has positive effects on anxiety, irritability, mood swings. It promotes the formation of myelin sheaths that helps to prevent things like ALS. It also is an anti-inflammatory. It balances our estrogen. It lowers LDL, which is oftentimes considered bad cholesterol. And then from there, it does so much with our bones, our immunity. It increases our metabolic rate. It also converts some of our estrogen to non-inactive or inactive estrogen. So that doesn't increase our chances of cancer down the road. And along with that, it aids the body in fertility. So you'll see a lot of doctors prescribing this. And so there's just so many things that progesterone does. And when you don't have it on the latter half of your cycle, you can start to notice your body is not functioning like it should, and therefore giving you spotting, heavy menses, and just so many other things that we'll talk about in later videos in the series. So when you look at these two hormones, on the top it's progesterone, on the bottom is estrogen. This is around that week 4 where there's this ratio that you can actually test to see if that ratio is exactly where it should be when it comes to your active estrogen and your active progesterone. Because like I said, you don't want progesterone to be lower than it's normally, because now you have estrogen dominance. And then you don't want estrogen to be higher, because now you just have estrogen dominance. So if you're getting this, high estrogen, low progesterone in any way can really intensify certain symptoms that you would be getting right before your period or around the week before your period. But some things just up in general that can cause low progesterone, really bad diets that soak up your body's resources, especially diets high in sugar or processed foods, and then chronic stress. Your body has to make a decision: cortisol, progesterone. And if you're asking your body, it's going to think about survival, which is cortisol. And a lot of times you hear cortisol steal when you relate it to your sex hormones. And that's what it's doing. It's stealing that productivity away from progesterone and only for cortisol. So a lot of stress, and we'll talk a little bit about the different types of mental and physical stress that can really put your body in a much more highly stressed mode. And then, of course, we talked about xenoestrogens. We call them phytoestrogens, xenoestrogens. They can amplify all of this. So leading to that restless sleep, those mood swings, the headaches, heavy periods, and obviously irritability. So with that, your body eventually goes into this final descent, and it really can trigger some extreme irritability and insomnia. We know this as like a PMDD. It's like a more severe form of PMS, and we'll break that open on another video in this series. But one thing that's real common that my clients are always asking is like, okay, what can I take to supplement and this, and how do I do that? Everything is going to be individualized, but at a very basic a foundation of supplements, you really want to choose, number one, high quality supplements, because you get what you pay for. And in addition to that, there's a 4 that I typically will make sure my clients are on. The first one is I use Alpha Base by Orthomolecular. It is a professional grade supplement that really helps to cover all the things that we could be missing in our diet. And if you're someone that's on that standard American diet, you will see that you are missing a lot of nutrients, and this does a great job. It's 4 capsules. I split it up, 2 capsules for lunch and dinner. And then I'm also using vitamin D3 and K2. D3 does not just work for absorption of calcium. It works on hormones all throughout the body. It also helps with bone formation. So I'm using D3 and K2 because K2 helps to drive calcium into the bone. So really keeping it out of the arteries where it can calcify. So vitamin D3, you need to have your vitamin D levels checked after summer and after winter to make sure you're getting the right dose to keep you at a good range. Because one thing that we notice about good vitamin D levels is that it has anti-cancerous benefits. Okay, so very affordable to do, but you need to get those lab tests. And then lastly, magnesium. If I had 3 supplements, those are the 3 that I'm taking. Magnesium is so undertaken, it's so undervalued, and many of us are in deficiencies. I think over 80% of Americans have deficiencies in magnesium inside their cells. So I use this one called reactant magnesium powder. It has magnesium bisglycinate, which also has a calming effect, but the glycinate is a chelated form which allows the body to absorb it right away, so it's ready to work. So you can ready to push it into the cells so you can get maximum effect. And then lastly, if you have the funds for it, a really high quality omega-3. that has positive brain effects in producing and keeping the neurons and everything in balance, as well as your cells. Your cells are made of good fats because that creates the barrier around your cells. So you might as well use a much higher quality omega-3 to really allow those cells to stay alive longer and work more efficiently. So if you have the funds, I would just do the top three. If you can afford the fourth one, omega-3. If you're curious about how to get a hold of these types of supplements, you can DM me, or what you can do is click on the link below where you'll have my full script, and therefore you can sign up. And then once I see you sign up, I can forward you the recommendations so you can take a look at these. But if you have any questions, please send them down below at the comment. Our next series, our next video will be on the pain and sleep gap when it comes to dysmenorrhea. Remember, those are the menstrual cramps. What can we do to lessen the severity and moving forward so we can sleep better? Now, if you like this series, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss these videos. I do these because I love educating any way I can. And if you have any suggestions, please hit them down below so we can talk and go through. But this is going to be my series for the next couple of weeks so we can really wrap around our minds what is the hormone connection and how does that affect your sleep. I appreciate you tuning in, and like always, have a great sleep.